Hey guys, August 3rd through August 28th, I'm going to be in Edinburgh, Scotland doing the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with Brendan Burns. We're watching bad wrestling and making great jokes. We're doing a show every single night. We'd love for you to come. Information is at ColtCabana.com. I know you're going to enjoy that show, but for now, enjoy this show.
This is the Art of Wrestling with professional wrestler Colt Cabana.
All right, how you guys doing? Come on in, sit down, relax. You're about to listen to The Art of Wrestling, a professional wrestling podcast. It's a life podcast, personal journal, and at your ways, the minds, souls, the hearts, and lives of the people involved in the world of professional wrestling. I'm your host. My name is Colt Cabana. I'm a podcaster. I'm a podcaster awards host. I'm an awards host. I'm a man who went to Denver and did not smoke their marijuana. Most importantly, though, I am a professional wrestler. And I am sitting here live in my studio apartment in Chicago, Illinois. Before I go any further, this is fan supported and listener supported podcast supported by people just like you. We give it to you free of charge every single Thursday. ColtCabana.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, Howl app, wherever you get your podcasts from. A couple great ways that you can support, rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. Tell a friend, let somebody know, tweet it out, Snapchat it out. I can't Snapchat it out. I've tried to. I can't get my Snapchat name, and so then, therefore, I will not be on Snapchat. When I do get my name, then maybe I will Snapchat it out with you. Best way that you could support, though, ColtMerch.com, digitalcolt.com, t-shirts, buttons, pictures, posters, DVDs, digital downloads. Digital Colt's newly upgraded. Don't even need a username. Just buy it right off the site. Huge thanks to Paul Couture, hooking it up, doing a great job. ColtMerch.com, digitalcolt.com. Yeah, went to Denver, and I thought that it was medicinal marijuana, because I've been to California and I thought that was the big celebration. Like, you can get your card, but it's just a piece of cake to get your card. You can basically tweet a doctor and he'll be like, yeah, you have whatever it is, and here's your card. And I thought that was the big celebration. No, I was wrong. Anyone could just, it's like Walgreens. I mean, it's not like Walgreens, but anyone. You don't need a bullshit excuse. You could just literally walk into a store and say, give me that Kush, give me that Chiba, and whatever other words I've learned from watching Half-Baked like a million times, I will take that. And that is why it's a city of high motherfucking people. It's not fun, but it's like fun to walk into a place and you're just like, oh, I know what you smell like. You're doing something illegal. No, you're not. Perfectly fine. Denver. Lucha Libre and Laughs, that's where I was at. It was such a fun show. They're doing it right. Combination of Lucha, even though it's all just white people from Denver, and Libre, and some stand-up, some real good stand-up. And it's kind of fun because I think I was on one of the very kind of first shows a couple years ago, and it was a decent house, and now 500 people, standing room only, and he's packing that place. Nick Gossard over there in Denver, watching something grow, watching a great concept of comedy and wrestling, and watching it grow. It's not supposed to take over the fucking world. It's supposed to be a thing to do on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday night. That's all wrestling is. It's just, let's entertain you for a couple hours. You can go there, you say you had a great time, maybe tell some friends, you come back the next time. We're not trying to discover anything or make anything. It's just, let's fucking entertain you for a couple of hours, and that's what they're doing, Lucha Libre and Laughs. Glad to be a part of the team. I'm also a part of the Global Force Wrestling team. I wrestled there last Friday in a minor league baseball field. And when I got to the building, it's not the building, when I got to the arena, well, it's not even an arena. When I got to the field, I said to myself, oh yeah, I thought that's what they do. Global Force Wrestling versus minor league baseball. And this is the only one they were doing this summer. So I was happy to be a part of that, but kind of sad because I wanted to do the old baseball tour. I did that last year in Iowa. I did 3 shows at the baseball field. It was so much fun. There's just something about summer, being a part of a baseball team that you're not, because you're on a wrestling team and wrestling. So happy to be part of that one. And hopefully 2017, we do a whole tour. We tour every single minor league baseball field. That's my summer 2017 wish. Tour more baseball fields. I'm going to talk about my guest in a second. I want to bring up something weird, though. Sprained my ankle on Sunday. Bad. I'm recording this Tuesday night. I'm going to be doing the podcast awards Wednesday night. By the time you hear this, those both will be done. I sprained my ankle, and I'm wrestling 150 times a year. I'm on the road 200 times a year, and I book out all these shows with the idea and the assumption that I will not get hurt. I will be able to wrestle on the next show. And in my match against Jay Lethal on pay-per-view, I did my ribs very bad, and I was protecting my ribs for a while. But, you're able to walk with your ribs, and you could be able to protect yourself in some manner. With your ankle, like if you can't move, if you can't walk, you can't even get to the ring. It looks obvious. So that's a scary thing in the world of the independent wrestler. We don't work, we don't eat. I got nobody looking after this thing. Usually I'm the laziest person ever though, but I did realize I got to make sure this isn't fucked. I got a big schedule coming up. So I did some rest, ice, compression, and elevation. Especially since it was in Denver. That wasn't hard, right? Elevation. So as of now, I think I should be good, but that's a scary moment for me. I was on a path where I was like, I haven't gotten hurt in a while, been doing good. And right when you say that, that's when you roll an ankle by hopscotching over a person doing a giant swing and thinking that's the smart move. Jumpin' Jim Brunzell is on the show this week. That's right, the Killer Bee himself is on the show, and I'm excited because I'm an 80s kid, and this is, Killer Bees, man. The Killer Bees were one of my favorites, and I had to come to a realization that in my listenership, there's probably people, and Jim, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry about it, there's probably people who have no fucking clue who this guy is. And in my head, this is Jim Brunzell, man. One of the Killer Bees, one of my favorite tag teams. Very upset that they never got the tag titles. I mean, they were a cornerstone of that tag team division. The Hart Foundation, Demolition, the Islanders, they were right in there and they were sweet. Two different bees. They had the bee costume. They were high flyers. Just makes all sense on all different levels. So it is kind of weird to me that there's probably people who have no clue who Jim Brunzell is. And I guess it makes sense. It was only so long he was in the WWF during that heyday when you really look back at it in retrospect. And a lot of his time was in the AWA and just years on the road, before that, just doing your thing, getting to the point where you're good enough where you can just get plugged into the WWF heyday. And then you're one of the main players and it's good because you're good at what you do and you're on that crazy, crazy schedule. So I hate to say learn about Jim Brunzell, but learn about Jim Brunzell. He's great. His voice is amazing. Just that Minnesota. Oh, yeah. Hey, Minnesota. There's something so soothing about that Minnesota voice. And also, Jim Brunzell was a guy in my head. In my head was just a nice dude. There's never anything wrong. He wasn't a mean person, wasn't mean-spirited. And that all came true. That was exactly who he was. He, in person, matched he in my head. And that's good. And I'm grateful for that. That makes me very, very happy. I know there's a fan up there, Scott in Minnesota, who was telling me on Facebook that, Jim, and we talk about working and getting out of the business and doing other jobs. And I don't blame Scott for this, but he was just kind of maybe a little weirded out that Jim Brunzell isn't living like on a mansion off of his wrestling fame. But not let it be a lesson, but just keep in mind that wrestlers are wrestlers, but wrestling is a job. And wrestling is a great job, and some of us can't do it forever, and there's going to come a time and point where that job has dried up. There's only so many spots in the wrestling industry, and it's very hard to stay around for a long, long time and then retire off of that. So when that job's done, you move on to another job. There's nothing to be ashamed of, and there's going to be a point where this all dries up for me, and maybe one day I go get another job, and in the back of my head, not in some Randy the Ram situation, but you just want people to be accepting that, hey, that's a dude. One time he wrestled a dude. The other time he sold me some insurance. You know what I'm saying? So just remember, we all got jobs, but if you want to stay in the wrestling business, don't do the job. That was a stupid wrestling pun from me to you. All right, we do have a song of the week this week, and it's brought to you by Harry's. Yeah, that's right. We're talking razors sent to your home, free shipping, great shave. It's such a no-brainer. Nobody likes to go to the store and buy razors. That's a scientific fact. A, they're expensive, always. B, they're locked up. Always, like little razor prisoners. Well, guess what? Harry's isn't expensive, and it's sent right to your door. I use it. I got a stock from the ones that they sent me, and also from the ones I ordered using my own coupon code, of course. They're half the price of those big brands because they went to Germany, they bought a German factory, and they cut out the middlemen, and they just sell them directly to you. They got a starter kit, and it's only $15. It's a razor handle, 3 5-blade razors, and moisturizing shave cream. First-timers can take $5 off of that with my code WRESTLING. That means you're getting it for $10 and free shipping. Go to HARRYS.com, enter the code wrestling, get that $5 off, and stop compromising. Give Harry's a try today.
For consideration, paid for by the following.
Hey, we're also sponsored today by Squarespace. Whether you need a landing page, a beautiful gallery, a professional blog, or any sweet kind of wrestling-related page of any kind, it's all included with your Squarespace website. Let's talk about why Squarespace rules. It's easy with a click of the mouse, drag and drop. You can build a website. They got free custom domains. Sign up for a year. They'll give you a domain free for a year. They got beautiful templates, aka gone are the days of those GeoCities pages with the dancing icons, although I do miss those a little bit. Seamless commerce tools, which basically means if you got something to sell, you can sell it easy on a Squarespace site, and hopefully that's the reason why you have the site, and then you're making that money back. 24/7 customer support. That means they got your back. Literally millions of people use it, and some of your favorite websites are no doubt ran by Squarespace. You might as well go with what the pros use. Start your free trial today. Go to squarespace.com and enter the offer code COLT and get 10% off your first purchase. That offer code is COLT. Squarespace. Set your website apart.
Are you friends with Bruce Springsteen?
Yes, I am.
You're friends with him?
Yes.
Because, okay, so they just listened to, you don't know, they've just listened to, and hopefully I remembered, I played your song Badlands.
Okay.
Which Bruce Springsteen, you said, gave you permission.
Yes, to use the music of Badlands.
And
I wrote this song 36 years ago in Japan on a train, and it was just words that I put to Bruce's music, and then I came back and made a picture disc. And
what's a picture disc?
Well, there's a picture of it in the book.
Okay.
It's like a big album, and it had a picture of me, and then on the back it had the lyrics, and it was just one song, and it was called Badlands, and I had another group from Minneapolis, St. Paul called Fragile do it, and then when I went to New York in '85, I took this record with me, and Vince was doing wrestling and rock then, and he had Cyndi Lauper, and he had Meatloaf, who just passed out last night, I guess.
Passed out or passed away?
No, he passed out on stage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't look too good anymore. So I gave Vince, and I said, listen, this will fit right in. And what I had heard was Vince had put the picture disc LP in the back of the limousine, and it was about 95 degrees, and it turned into a big clamshell, and they all put their cigars out on it after that.
Oh, it turned into the perfect
cigar holder.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, Vince wasn't going to promote it. So I sort of ate the first song, and then
was that your only copy though?
No.
Okay.
I had I spent about $5,000 on them, and I actually sold them through the wrestling magazines, and it was a pretty. Matter of fact, I have a couple of them left.
Can we talk about selling? Because people selling stuff through magazines. People were like, in my mind, when I think about it, and you could tell me there were people making money.
Sure.
And the Grappler, right, was selling his masks.
Yes.
So was that like a thing that the boys would?
I think there was there wasn't many venues or ways that you could get your stuff out, and a lot of the promoters would, use your likeness and name and make T-shirts, and you never see a dime of it. So what happened was these wrestling magazines, most of them were out of New York, and Bill Apter's deal, and what they would do is you would pay an ad, and then you'd have a P.O. box, and you'd pay for the ad, whether it be $50, $75. Mm-hmm. So then the magazine would run a little ad in the back saying you can get, Jim Brunzell's Badlands at P.O. Box.
Who's shipping out? Are you shipping it out?
Yeah, no, actually.
You're on the road, right?
Yeah, I was on the road. I had a fellow in Mankato by the name of Norman Keitzer, who had a publication about wrestling. He was one of the first guys. And he sold them for me.
Gotcha.
So it was pretty cool.
And then where does that relationship come in?
I tell you, in 1975, I was coming home from a shot, and we were flying a small airplane. I got in my car, and I drove it was Flying Cloud Airport and which is over in Eden Prairie in Minneapolis. And I was, my wife and I had just got married, and it was probably like in September, and I heard a song on the radio, and it was sort of more or less operatic, and it was a rock song, and they didn't say who the singer was, and I thought, God dang, that was a hell of a song. So about 2 days later, I heard, the musician's name was Bruce Springsteen from New Jersey, and it just so happened that Bruce was, this was Born to Run, and he was going to play at the Tyrone Guthrie Theater, which was downtown Minneapolis, September 22nd or 23rd that month. And I had to go wrestle in Rockford, so I missed it. So then, to make a long story short, Bruce got in a litigation with this Mike Appel, who was his manager. He couldn't perform or record for 3 years, so he didn't come out again until The Darkness on the Edge of Town. So I went and saw all the shows in that I could in Chicago, Minneapolis, and I was trying to find a way to get backstage. So finally, in 1984, Bruce opened up the Born in the USA tour in St. Paul, and everybody knew me in St. Paul. And I walked backstage with my wife, and Jimmy McDuffie, who was Bruce's right-hand man, came up to me, and I said, listen, I don't know if it's a possibility, but I'm a local wrestler, and I'm a huge fan of Bruce. And he said, I'll go get him. And Bruce came right out and took a picture with me, and I gave him that goofy song, Badlands, and he looked at it. It was on a cassette, and he put it in his pocket. And then I saw him 2 weeks later again in Chicago, and what had happened was Jim McDuffie sort of decided he was going to raise a family, and another fellow took over by the name of Terry McGovern. Terry McGovern was with Bruce. He just passed away about 5-6 years ago, but he was Bruce's right-hand man for 23 years, and he was a huge wrestling fan, so,
But you walked, I like the idea that you walked back, you kind of walked in. Did you guys have that much clout, like AWA style, that you're like, everyone knew you?
Well, yeah, because the Civic Center, which was the big venue in St. Paul, to that date, the biggest attendance they ever had was Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis, which was an East-West connection, against Greg and I in a cage match. And they had, I believe it was either 17 or 19,000 people. It was the biggest crowd they ever had. And I mean, we hardly got any news at all because the local media here never gave wrestling any credence at all. No.
Why do you think that?
Well, I think because, they had the Vikings and they had the North Stars and Verne Gagne, who was the big world champion, they always, and Verne, it just drove Verne crazy that they wouldn't, give any
you were drawing 17,000.
Oh, exactly.
A lot,
yeah. Oh, God, yeah. We'd sold out. We'd sell out the St. Paul Auditorium, and then the Civic Center, and then the Minneapolis Auditorium, and it was on fire. And then when Hulk was here in the early 80s, I mean, every damn place we went to.
How often were you running Minnesota then?
Once a month.
Once a month, and like what kind of numbers were you doing once a month?
Oh, it was 15 to 17,000.
But you do little shows in Minnesota also? Or just
yes, spot shows like Duluth, maybe Mankato, maybe Moorhead.
Did you ever wonder, like, sometimes I'll do some stuff in Japan and they'll have like these giant Tokyo shows, and then an hour away there's like 300 people.
Yeah.
Would you have that when there's like 15,000 people and then there's like a spot
actually
show?
The spot shows really drew well, and that's because this was before the WWF,
right.
WWE. So the only thing they knew was the AWA, because we were more or less regionalized, North Dakota, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Chicago, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Denver, Colorado, Davenport, Iowa, etc., and every town, every small town in between. So the only wrestling they got was the regional AWA out of Minneapolis. So everybody, we had some great talent. I mean, Billy Robinson, Nick Bockwinkel, Bobby Heenan, Larry Henning, Wahoo McDaniels. It was incredible. Mad Dog Vachon, the Crusher, who was huge. And
you said Hulk really spiked it, though.
Oh God, yeah.
Was that post Rocky?
No, right after Rocky.
Post Rocky.
Yeah, excuse me.
So that's what did it, was the Rocky?
I think so, but here's the deal. Hulk came here, and they were trying to put him over as a heel, and he was beating two guys in the ring every day, and the people loved him. And he had Johnny Valiant as sort of his manager, and Johnny was a funny guy. And what happened was the people just really got on Hulk's bandwagon, and then they turned him babyface, and shit, he sold out it was record houses everywhere. And I think Verne, being the all-American type, athlete, amateur wrestler background, his ego couldn't take the fact that here they got this big muscle-bound, guitar-playing, blonde-haired guy who was very athletic in the ring. And this guy just took over,
And Verne would be like, "You'd feed him to me, and I'd beat him, right?"
Well, they never do that, because I think Verne was more or less at the end of his time in the ring, and he wanted to control that championship between Bockwinkel and himself, and then they had many matches with Hulk against Nick, and I mean they sold out all over, and then it was always a technicality, and people got pissed that Hulk never got it, and then they used to call him the People's Champion, and he had shirts, and did
he see any money on that shirt, on those shirts?
You know what? That was a big deal. I'd heard that there was a rumor that Verne owed Hulk $40,000 in T-shirt money.
Wow.
And he didn't get it. So Hulk loved Minneapolis because he only worked 12 times a month.
Yeah.
And then he had his Japan deal. So he was, he's making $20,000 a week in Japan for Inuki. And then he come here and he loved it. And then he had the summers were really good here. And then I think they had this fraying of egos between him and Verne, and consequently, Hulk, Vince's dad died, and then Vince wanted to take over, and he needed somebody like Hulk, and if
that story's kind of been told, right?
Yeah, but Vince couldn't have done it without Hulk Hogan.
Of course,
he was the golden goose.
Yeah.
And when he left here and shit, all the guys were leaving, and oh my God, it was just. Everybody knew that where the promised land was in New York. And I finally left in 85, and I hated to leave.
You hated it?
Oh, God, I hated to leave my home.
Take me through the process of, did you go right from there, right to WWF?
Yes. I had opened up my own gym, and I had the gym running for about 4 years.
What was it called? Jumpin' Gym?
Yeah, it was called Jumpin's Gym's Gym. And it had the best goddamn hot steam bath in the cities. And it had a whirlpool. It was 5,000 square feet. I had $50,000 worth of the best equipment you could get then, Nautilus. And I had
that
York
was like a big
equipment.
investment for you.
Yeah,
right?
oh God, it was my only investment.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about it now. My wife and I don't like to mention that because... that was our only investment.
Right.
It didn't pay taxes for a number of years, but who gives a damn if you don't have anything to show for it? So to make a long story short, I went to Verne. I said, Verne, I need a guaranteed contract. I need $95,000 to remain in the AWA and be Greg's partner. And he said, you're not worth it. That's what he told me. So I'd been in contact. Hulk sort of,
Did your heart sink when you heard that?
Oh, God. Well, I had a feeling.
But you're not worth it. It's probably the meanest thing.
Yeah, I know it. And I thought, geez, here, Greg and I have been together for 10 years, drew houses, record houses, 2-time AWA world champions, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, God. So...
was the money and everything dwindling?
Oh, God, yes. They were losing. They were losing market share.
But you don't want to hear you want to hear I don't have the money.
Yeah.
Not, you're not worth it.
Well, that's,
right?
He wanted to make it as much as, Verne was, he was a very self-made man, and he was very egocentric. So he ain't going to compromise with nobody, and he never did. It was his way or... So to make, I thought, well, okay. So I went to and I'll never forget the first damn TV I did for Vince, and it was in Poughkeepsie. And I thought, oh, God, I'm not going to get along with this guy.
With Vince?
Yeah. Right off the bat, I knew it. And I knew it because he and I sort of saw through him, and, he's done a great job for what he wanted to do, and he's sort of re-educated the wrestling fan to what he wanted them to see. Mm-hmm. So now when I watch TV and turn on Raw or SmackDown or something, I'm bored silly because they stand in the ring and they talk with a mic for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. It goes back and forth, and I thought, holy smokes. And then they're on for 3 hours. And their numbers are just going, the ratings are going, mm-hmm. And I thought, and then everybody says, yeah, they got this and they got that. And then I say, well, it's pretty hard, to follow that because in my era, we were more, purists in the ring, and every match told a story, and every, sequential match from that built off of that, where Vince, he didn't care. He'd throw Hulk against Adrian Adonis, and the next time it'd be Jimmy Snuka against Don Morocco, no reason, and he'd just do that. And he just, when I went there in '85, he had 60 of the top talent in wrestling.
Plucked from everywhere.
Yeah. And then he had 3 towns a night. And 20 of us would go to these towns, and I wrestled on an average 27 days a month for 3 years. And we went 47 days without a day off. And then I broke my hand, and I had 1 day off to go home, and it swelled up, and they put a cast on. I came back, and the Bees won more matches with my casted hand because I'd clothesline him, and knock him silly. So I thought, shit, I better keep this damn thing. And then
when you're in the middle of that of 27 days a month, are you thinking back, those 12 days in Minnesota were great, or were you like, I love this? This is nice?
Well, the money was almost worth it. I mean, when we started off, he made everybody like $4,300, $4,500 a week, and all of a sudden you think, holy God, you take that times 4 weeks, $16,000 a month, and you think, holy smokes. But he had a way of taking it back, and then and then I remember he sent us to Australia, and we were making about $4,500 a week, and then he wanted Brian and I to go to the first tour in Australia, and he says, you're going to make $2,500 a week. And I said, well, Vince, why would Brian and I want to go when we're making twice that much here? Yeah. And he says, don't worry. He says, the next time I'll bump it up. And I said, okay. So we went over there for $2,500 a week, and then he never booked us there again.
That's fine, right?
That's Vince.
But you never got to go up.
Yeah.
Take me through the. You said you had so what? Hulk just said, "Hey, let's throw."
Well, he said, "Hey, there'll be a place for you here. We don't know what you'll do." And so I got there, and they had a great amount of talent, and they had George Scott was the booker. George Scott fired me down in. He was the worst booker I ever met in my life. I worked for him down in North Carolina, and I'll tell you a match and some people probably will remember this. I was a Mid-Atlantic champion, and the Iron Sheik, Khosrow, had beaten.
Your nickname for him?
Yeah, Iron Schnook. So he had that gimmick boot, loaded boot, and he beat me. And then I wrestled him on TV. And wound up putting a sleeper on him, taking his boot off, and then I said, I'm going to, beat him with his own boot. So we had a big match. I was wrestling the following Sunday in Roanoke, Virginia, and then that night in Charlotte. So we had I think it was a 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock start in Roanoke. So Sandy Scott, George Scott's brother, was the agent there, and he said, did you get your finish? And I said, no. And he says, well, George wants you to do an hour Broadway. I said, an hour Broadway? I said, I got his gimmick boot. I says, he might as well just dig a hole in the middle of the ring and bury me here because I'll never draw any more money. So, and it was a hard match. Oh, God, an hour with going to Khosrow. And he said, Jim, you lead. And he was... Well, we got through the match, and then I was really, really irate when we got to Charlotte, and we were going in the ring, and I said, George, Jesus, God, I said, what are you trying to do? Well, we're screwing with the people. I said, screwing with the people? I said, shit, if I can't beat him with his own boot, how the hell can I beat him regularly?
Yeah.
Well... So
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it wasn't much longer, and he fired me because he wanted me to do an hour draw with him in this little Indian reservation town, and I said, screw you, I'm not doing it. So the next day he says, I can't have that insubordination. I said, I realize that. And he says, I'm going to have to let you go. And I said, that's fine. I said, I'm ready to go back. So I worked.
Years later, you meet up with him.
Yeah, and I thought, oh God. And he says, Jim, don't worry about nothing. Everything bygone. And he had this great big calendar events, and it was, week by week for, every month. And it was, I swear it was 4 feet square. And he had all the towns, and I thought, holy Jesus. And he was doing it by hand. That was before the computers. And he just drove everybody crazy because we never had any time off. Khosrow worked so many days in a row.
Iron Sheik.
Yeah. So they came home one time, and his wife had redone the house, and he drove right by it. He didn't even recognize his house. So, it was hard.
So, but when you get there, it's not like you tell me, is it like we want this guy or we have a spot or, oh yeah, we'll take a great worker?
Well, no. Here's what Vince is. Vince is good. We got Jim away from Verne, and then we'll fit him in here,
Okay.
Because here's Vince's whole mentality. Vince was the king. He was the creator. He was going to create his own, superstars. And you could see what he did. He brought Jim Heltwig, God rest his soul. He died early, the Ultimate Warrior. But this guy had no talent at all. I mean, he was a big muscle-bound guy, but he didn't know nothing in the ring. All he could, he'd blow up hitting the ring ropes back and forth. Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, and he wasn't a bad guy, but all of a sudden, he's elevated to this, he's making $3 million a year.
Right.
$2 million. And I thought, God, and his matches last 45 seconds or 2 minutes.
Yeah. He figured it out, huh?
Oh, and I thought, oh God, here we go. And then he brought some other guys in that you never heard of, and then all of a sudden, boom, he made him some big money, and his whole idea was, I'm creating my own stars. Mm-hmm. And what Vince wanted to do was to create this long list of superstars that he could market, and that's what he did. He made all the T-shirts and hats and memorabilia and lunch boxes and action figures, and I remember looking at the first poster that they had of the Killer Bees, and then the first T-shirt looked like two amphibious, I don't know what they were, and I looked at it and I said, those are supposed to be Killer Bees? And then he had a picture of us, and Brian and I, both of us were looking bad, the wrong way, and he said, we'll go with that.
That's the one.
Yeah. I said, you gotta be kidding me. I said, this guy's trying to kill us, And that's what I think his intention was, He said, well, we'll give you the belts here. And then we got the gimmick with the mask, which was nobody had a gimmick like that for babyface. And it was a great gimmick. Mm-hmm. Nobody did. And we got over like a son of a gun. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't do anything with it. And then we'd always use it, and then we'd win the match, and then they'd take the belts away. And then I remember we were in, the place where they had the 80 Olympics up in New York, Lake Placid. Okay. So there's an 8-man tag, and it's George the Animal Steel, Coco Beware, Brian Blair, and myself. And at the end of the match, all 4 of us had our masks on. So George Steele's got the mask on, goofy, and he's trying to eat the turnbuckle. And then Coco's dancing in the middle of the ring, and I'm looking, and I said to Brian, that's the end of the bees, baby.
That's it.
Yeah.
You knew it, huh?
Yeah, I knew it.
Oh my God! What were you guys put together at first, right away?
Not right away.
I thought that Brian Blair had been like taken from Florida and was kind of just there for a while. Was that correct? Was that correct?
And then he decided with Blair and Brunzell, and then at that time they had a big defensive deal from the Miami Dolphins were called the Killer Bees. So Vince says, I'm going to use that Killer Bees, and then, Brian and I, and Brian, was always real gung-ho, and he wanted to do that flashy interview, and here I'm a typical, old school, babyface, real, just, calm, and Brian was buzzing around. So it was fun, and we made good money. But
were you forced to be friends, I guess?
No. Well, Brian and I got along real well. The only problem was that I couldn't share a room with him because he snored like a bull moose. And I told him, I said, he'd take a sleeping pill and I'd get into the bed and I'd no sooner turn the TV off and all of a sudden he'd blow my sheets off me with the doggone snoring. And I said, hey, we can't do this, pal. So I'd get my own room after that. And he was always, some of my buddies, Hillbilly Jim and a couple other guys, they called him Pokey because he was always so slow. Brian. And he'd be in there working on his mustache and his hair, and God love him. He was a great guy, and we had some really good times together, and we were a good team. And it's just, I remember we had great matches with the Hearts, and we had great matches with the Bulldogs up in Montreal.
You guys were like, it's funny like being in wrestling now, but when I was a kid, it's just like, I love the Killer Bees, man. Yeah, well, and a lot of me was always just like, why aren't they the best?
Yeah, well, they Vince didn't like us.
And now, now you see the other side of it.
And then, they had, at that time, they had a lot of different tag teams. God, we had some great tag teams.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like when you saw, when he puts like Zinc and Martel together, or you see him putting these guys together, are you guys like, we got to step it up, or that might be our spot? Or
we couldn't have done nothing. We just said, hey,
but
the writing's on the wall. Well, you think of it, sure. You think, here's another baby. Well, they were more or less, I don't know what they were. Then they turned Rick into a heel, and then Zinc left. And then they called Rick the model.
But I'm just saying, as they bring in all these like kind of other tag teams.
Well, see, he was they were emphasizing tag teams. They had the Rougeaus, they had the Bees, they had the Hearts, they had the Bulldogs, and then they teamed Morocco up with Bobby Orton Jr. And then I'm trying to think of who else they had. But they had a number of tag teams, much more now. I mean, I look at the tag teams now, and they got 3 guys in the ring with a guy with the trumpet, and I thought, holy Jesus.
Well, okay, I had 2 questions coming. Well, when you guys wore the high tops,
yes,
did you? Because you're an old school, like you have. I know you have an old school like mentality about wrestling, especially coming from the AWA. Were you like, we can't not wear wrestling boots?
Well, here's the deal. At that time, we thought if we wore those black, and they were called Dunks, and they were Nike.
Mm-hmm. And you'd get sponsored.
Yes. And, we sent a letter to Nike, and you know what they said? It's below the standards of Nike to...
At least they wrote back.
Yeah. And I thought, well, you bastards, and they could have made a fortune.
Yeah.
And then I had my shoes for years. And we wore them for a little bit, and then when they weren't going to do it, we went back to the yellow boots. So I had my shoes, and then I hear on the radio they said that they're buying these old Nike tennis shoes down at a downtown hotel to sell over in Japan. They gave me $300 for them.
Is this recently?
No, this was 15 years ago.
Okay, but
so I went and got $300. They interviewed. I said, all they're doing is collecting dust. I said, I'm done wrestling, so
Well, I bet you could have made $300 on the wrestling memorabilia.
Oh well,
if you think about it.
I don't know. A lot of people
easy down at the hotel.
Yeah, it was good, and I thought, and I knew I had another pair somewhere, and I couldn't find them. So my wife said, "Don't sell any more of your stuff, for God's sake." So,
and then the other thing was, I was gonna say, like, I was always weirded out, like when you guys. So when you, and I don't know. Well, you guys split, but then you had like a weird singles, like lower card run.
Yeah, well, he was jobbing me, and it pissed me off.
Obviously he didn't like you.
Oh God! And I told him, I said, Vince, I got a great idea, and I said, why don't you come in during an interview and criticize me, and I'll beat the shit out of you, and then I'll put the boots to you, and then you can come and beat me in all the towns. And he said, no, I don't think we'll do that. Yeah. Because I would have been gone. I would have been gone. But, he was just...
You saw the writing on
Well, I saw it, and I told Pat Patterson, who was assistant booker, I said, this son of a gun, I says, God dang, he's I don't mind doing jobs at the house shows for these guys, but I don't want to do it on TV.
You're going,
And then I did that for a little bit, and I said, hey, if you're going to beat me on TV, I ain't going to do it. I said, just tell them. So they fired me 3 times.
Why'd they bring you back to 2 times?
Because guys were hurt.
Oh. Like, we need him.
Yeah, we need him now to do more jobs. So, shit, I remember I worked around with Kurt Hennig and we had some good matches. And then I worked with, Shawn Michaels.
I saw you do a match so I watched a match with you and Flair. And you know what I popped for the best? Is you took a shoulder tackle and then you turned your body and landed on your stomach.
Oh, God.
And I was like,
that me or him?
It was you. I was like, that's
Christ.
a veteran move right there.
Maybe my back was sore.
That's what I was thinking.
But I had some great matches with Rick.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It was a great match. That's
we
the
had
one thing that came to mind.
three draws in Charlotte, and I remember this. I tell this in my book. We're down in Anderson, South Carolina. It's the hottest goddamn building in the territory. No air conditioning, and they had 1,000 people there. So how are we doing for time?
You're great. Sorry.
So we're going to have a match. And I'm the Mid-Atlantic champion. He's the U.S. champion. He's put his belt on the line. So we're having him. So what happens is he jumps my ass in the very beginning. Boom, boom, boom. I make a comeback. I put his figure 4 on him, and he submits. So I raise my hand, and they ring the bell, and then the ref goes, no. The bell hadn't rung, so we had to start all over again. And we did an hour draw after that. Wow. And Rick and I were sweating so much, we couldn't even grab onto each other. And then I come in the locker room, and I'm just physically drained. And Tony Atlas says, come on, Jim, we got to go. And I said, Tony, I said, just let me relax here. I said, don't worry, you'll get home, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, God dang, we got to get... I said, listen, I just did an hour. I'm tired. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to have a good
beer.
Dip of Copenhagen and have the beer out in the car for sure. But, yeah, that was another George Scott finish. I'm going to tell one more George Scott. First time I come into Charlotte, and I'm working in a town called Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's about 80 miles from Charlotte. And I'm working with Rene Goulet, who I'd known. Wonderful guy. And I'd wrestled with him in Minneapolis, and he could do anything in the ring and blah, blah, blah. So Sandy Scott, the agent, says, okay, George wants you to hit him with 6 drop kicks and then cover him. I said, what? He says, 6 drop kicks. I said, Jesus, Sandy. I said, why don't I just hit him with 1 drop kick, and that'll be the best one, and then cover him, he can kick out on 3. No, George wants 6. So I always say this was sequential to a wrestler's vasectomy, because the first one hit him here, second one hit him here, third one hit him here,
chin,
fourth,
chest,
fifth,
stomach,
right in the groin, the 6th one. And by that time, I couldn't get up. Right. We were both on the ground, and he couldn't get up anymore. So I covered him 1, 2, 3. I said, oh, God. So I think the next time I saw George, I says, I hope you don't plan on having that being my finish sequence. No. And I thought,
Imagine that's you have to do that every night.
Oh,
6
God.
in a row.
Christ, I would have been 180 pounds at the end of the month.
Right.
But
and your opponents would have hated you.
Yeah, I know.
Your opponents' wives would have hated you.
Well, yes. I know. I saw One Man Gang in New York. We did it was about 6 or 8 weeks ago. We did a signing. And One Man Gang comes up to me and said, Jimmy, my jaw still hurts where you hit me with that drop kick. I said, oh, bull. But it was always good to see these guys, when you travel and see, you haven't seen them for a long time. And you think back, holy sheez, it was 30 years ago. When
you got out of wrestling, because you did some of the UWF stuff, I think, right?
Yeah.
And then did you kind of do some Japan on the back end? Or
No, I did. We went to Malaysia in 95 or something like that, or 94. Brian and myself, and we had a couple other guys.
Just one of the random tours, though?
Yeah, random. Matter of fact, the guy owed us money. He owed Brian and I $5,000. He took off.
Works out.
Yeah, it was horrible. Never went back again.
Do you feel like, did you kind of go out on wrestling on your own terms? Or did you kind of like...
Well, I did at the end, because I realized I couldn't do what I had my last match on my 50th birthday in 1999 with Jim Neidhart.
Good Lord, I was gonna say, you look. That couldn't have been more than. You look amazing, by the way.
Well, I'll be 67 next month. But so I'm working with Jim Neidhart, and he was out the night before with Ken Patera. So he grabs a headlock on me, and I could feel his heart going. And he was squeezing my head so hard, I thought he was going to pop it off, and I thought, this is it. And I never worked again.
He's 50.
I said, yeah, I was 50th. 50th birthday. Run. Yeah.
Run.
And I think, and then I see some of these guys that are still trying to work, and get in the ring, like Tito, and Tito still looks good. I said, but I said, Jesus, you can make some more money, but you just can't do that stuff. I couldn't do it. You know, I got my shoulder hurt, my knee hurt, my hips hurt. And I thought, gosh, you know, people are expecting me to do this. And it's funny, a couple of years ago, a guy says, why don't you still got your boots and tie? I said, yeah. And he said, well, how about, I said, no. I said, I'm not going to go down there, because if you go down to the ring dressed in your tights and stuff, people are going to expect you to do something. Of
course.
And I'm not going to cheat them by having me stand on the rope.
And you're the dropkick guy.
And then Brian Blair gets inducted into the Waterloo Hall of Fame last year, and he's working in a 6-man tag, and he's just had 2 neck surgeries. I says, Brian, what are you doing? Oh, I can't help myself.
They asked me to.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, so AW, were you brought in by like Verne? Were you trained like?
Yes,
were you part
1972.
Of that? You were part of that camp?
Yes.
And did he recruit
Ric
you,
Flair.
or were you?
Well, see, Greg and I were teammates at the University of Minnesota our freshman year. He was a walk-on quarterback. I was a walk-on receiver. So he and I hit it off real good. You know, we did real well in practice.
Yeah.
And then Greg, they moved him to defensive back, so he transferred to Wyoming to play quarterback. So after, and we'd been in touch and stayed in touch and everything, and then...
were you into wrestling?
No.
No.
I had a free agent tryout with the Redskins in 71. Didn't make it, and I thought, I'll go back and get my degree and see. So then Greg calls me up and he says, geez, he says, Ken Patera is going to come back from the Olympics and my dad's going to train him. Do you want to be involved in the class? And I said, well, God, the only wrestling I did was intramurals in high school. He said, don't worry about it. So it was Ric Flair from Edina, and it was Khosrow Vaziri from Tehran, Bob Bruggers, myself, Greg, and I think that was it. Ken Patera. Yeah. So, and they beat the dog crap out of us. Oh, God, 10 weeks, 6 days a week, 6 hours a day.
Did you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I didn't know. I thought, holy God, what did I get myself into? So the first match I had...
Why'd you stay with it?
Because I thought, you know what, I can do this.
Okay.
I think I could do it. And besides that, Verne says, I want to see how high you can drop kick. So he put his hand up like that, and I hit his... I almost high jumped just under 6'9" in my collegiate days. So I could jump. I had really good... So he put his hand up there, and I hit him with... He says, oh, God, you're going to have a hell of a drop kick. So to make another long story short, I remember my first match. It was December 27th, 1972. It was up in Moorhead, Minnesota, and it was with a kid named Dennis Stamp.
Yes, who's been on this show.
Has he? And we had a 15-minute draw, and I swear to God, I thought I was going to die. I came out of the ring, and I was sucking air, and I came in, and I kicked over, because I thought that had to have been a horseshit match. And then Dusty Rhodes is sitting over in the corner, and he's going on main event. And he said, Jimmy, don't act that way. Don't act that way. You're going to have plenty of stinkers. So I sort of... And then the next match I had in Milwaukee was with Stan Kowalski.
Okay.
And he was older at the time, and we had a hell of a match, and he put me over, and then I got the check for the $820 for 2 shows, and I thought, holy smokes, not bad.
Great, right?
Yeah. So I said, holy cow, here we go.
Yeah.
So Verne kept me in the AWA for a little bit, and then he sent me to Kansas City. And I went down there and worked for Bob Geigel and Pat O'Connor, which was, really opening my eyes to the world of wrestling. Because
the world of life or the world of wrestling?
The world of both.
Yeah.
But life in the world of wrestling when you're not spoiled at your home. And I remember wrestling twice a night, opener, sometimes 3 times, opener, tag team, and then they have a battle royal or something like that. And I remember my first paycheck, I got $27.50, and I said, oh my God.
What happened to $400?
I know it. And we were working every night. And then they teamed me up. This Gus Karras, who was the oldest promoter in the country. He was like 84 years old. He was a Greek. And he ran St. Joe, Missouri. And he says, we will put you and Mike George together. You guys will be a good team. And we were a good team, and we got over. And, we were both 22 years old. And he was married. He was an amateur wrestler out of St. Joe. And we worked with Roger Kirby and Lord Alfred Hayes, and they had the Central States champion tag team, and we beat them, and we did very well. And I was down there for about a year, and then Verne says, well, I got a deal for you. You're going to go to Japan. And I says, who with? He says, yourself. And I said, oh, Jesus, this is 1974. So I fly to Japan, and I'm there with a mess of guys I didn't know. But and I thought,
For who?
It was Baba. It was all Japan. And
Isn't there a million gaijin there?
Pardon?
Isn't there like a million Americans?
Oh, there was, but I didn't know any of the guys I went with.
Yeah, but you can make friends.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
But even so,
Tony
at first you were
Marino.
a little scared.
Yeah, Tony Marino, and a guy named the Brute from Florida, and then the Sheik from Detroit was there, and then Sailor Ed White from Montreal. He was another character. Holy Jesus! And there was a fellow, Antonio Apollo. His real name was Vincent de Negris. So I'm over there, and we're over there 5 weeks. And I mean, this third night there, I'm in a cage match. And I thought, oh, God. And they're, everything is working out okay. And finally, we got done with the 5 weeks. And I thought, boy, I can't. So we go back to Japan, or go back to Hawaii. And I thought, I'm going to rest for a week before I have to go home. I get there. The next day, I get there at, 10 o'clock at night. Next day, they said, you got to come home. You're going to do TV with Greg, and we're going to call you the High Flyers. So I only had 1 day off, and I was pissed. But it wound up good, So that was the beginning of the High Flyers, and, we were together off and on for 10 years. And it was a good team. We had incredible talent to work with.
And you talked about that cage match. Was that the biggest gate? You said 17,000.
Yes.
And was that like the highest moment?
That was my biggest paycheck for the AWA. I got $4,674.
Got a vacuumer outside.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. So you have 4,000.
$4,674.
But take away money.
Yeah.
And I understand that you come from that old school of money. But did you take that moment in? Were you happy, or were you just oh, hey, look what we did, and then we'll go to the next show?
I was happy, but we had to work earlier in the afternoon in Rockford, so I thought, God, and I think out of all the matches that I had, I got more satisfaction from doing single matches with Nick Bockwinkel, who was a brilliant worker, incredible. And I did a number of hour draws with him, and he was wonderful. And then I did draws with Harley Race, who was another different guy in the ring, but he had his own method. And then I worked with the Funk Brothers, who were great talent. And then the guy who I considered who was the best in my era was Bob Orton Jr. He was incredible. And he could do anything. His timing was precise. Everything he did looked good in the ring. He didn't rush or nothing.
Was he? Correct me. He was a wrestler.
Yes,
right?
He did a lot. I mean, he was a wrestling heel.
But the boys all wanted to wrestle with him and could appreciate him.
Oh God,
maybe not as much as the fans.
All the good baby faces wanted to, because they'd always want to work with a guy who was a solid heel rather than a character heel. Because it's so hard to work with a character heel. Guys even though they were over, so whatever they did, it got over. But you had to really feed them.
Give me an example of a character heel.
The Crusher. Let's see, Mad Dog Vachon, who was just, he was completely, you never know what he was going to do. I'll tell you a quick story. It's in the book. I'm working with him in Denver. I'm scared to death. He looks at me like this, and he's quite a guy. I don't know if you know who Mad Dog Vachon was, but he looked like the executioner back in the medieval times. So we're in the ring, tie up, turns me around, throws me into the turnbuckle, and he hits me, and I reversed him, and I hit him, and he said, harder. So I hit him again. He said, harder. So I wound up, and when I hit him right in the chin. Boom! Snapped his head back, and he went down to the second turnbuckle, and he popped right out, and he poked me in the eye, and then he fish hooked my cheek like that, and he threw me out of the rope. So I'm down on the floor, and before I knew it, I saw this little faint shadow, and all of a sudden I had no wind. He had jumped off the apron with both feet on my chest, and I'm going, trying to grab for air. Meanwhile, he's throwing me back into the ring and he says, "Not that hard." So we went another 15, 20 minutes, and I thought, God, don't book me with this guy again, because he was the dog,
Awesome. And that story is in this book, Matt
Yes,
Lands.
Badlands. You can get it online at blurb, BLURB.com.
That's the
and
big
just
stuff.
go Badlands. It's a great book. There's only one off-color story in there. There's some great pictures. No axe to grind. Some wonderful stories on the road and in the AWA and also in the WWE. So
WWF.
excuse me. Yes, that's World Wrestling Federation.
I saw you were on Twitter, right?
Yes, well, my son started helping me out with that.
Do you know what that is?
Yes, I know what it is.
No, do you know your Twitter handle?
No.
Okay, I think I know it. I'm going to put it on there.
Okay.
And your son kind of actually helped set this up. So.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And
With
he's
you
out
and
in,
I.
he's out in San Francisco now.
Okay.
Previewing some big he's into film. He does a lot of he's got 2 different film that he promotes festivals, one in Austin, Texas, and one in St. Paul.
Ooh.
So he loves Austin. We were down in Austin. Have you ever been to Austin?
I've been. It's great.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see where the young kids want to be there because
course.
it's a hip town and it's a very liberal town for Texas, and something to do there every night. Great places to eat. And
As an artist, did you consider yourself more as an athlete or an artist? As wrestling changes.
Nah, I think I was always an athlete, and I tried my best every night. I worked around my skills. I wanted to have a good match every night, and a good match meant that you worked for your opponent as much as he should work for you, because there was many times as you went into different areas, guys didn't give a shit. They say, "I'm getting over, I'm going to use you to," and then you say, "Well, hey, pal, there's 2 of us in there, know." So I enjoyed the opportunity, and I think that my area of trying to be an athlete in the ring worked well, and we built a lot of matches on a storyline, of good versus bad and blah, blah, blah. And it worked out good. I really, the only regret I ever had about wrestling was I think I went too long. I should have got out of there because, I did some different stuff in the 90s. I managed a car wash and I sold vitamins and I did this, and then I was wrestling part-time all the time and making, 45, 50 grand part-time. That's not bad.
Right.
It's hard to make that now, full-time. But I thought, when you reach the age of 45, 50, if you don't have something secure, what does wrestling set you up for? Unless you're in the wrestling business and can work for Vince or, do something, you're shot because, people don't care. They say, "Oh, yeah, I remember you, Jim. Yeah. And it still works out. A lot of people recognize me, and I've used it to my advantage. But
Springsteen.
Yeah, shit. Well, people go crazy about that, But I think that if I could have probably quit, like at 40.
And then set yourself up.
Yeah.
Get back in it.
Yeah, because it's hard, and wrestling does not prepare you for anything, unless you're going to go be a movie star or a writer.
I would think it would set you up for being a car salesman.
Oh, but geez,
No?
I sold trucks.
Working these people for a truck.
No, it's hard work. Ric Gagne's doing that right now, and he can't stand it. No, get that winning Powerball.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to have
Colt,
you on.
thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and read the book, god dang it.
You got it.
Okay.
What a pleasure to talk to Jim Brunzell. What a sweetheart. Buy his book. He gave me the book. He signed it to me. First of all, my reading preferences, but the pictures. There's so many pictures on here. And Jim Brunzell isn't like Instagram savvy. So these aren't getting out there. These are just in his book. This is his Instagram. His Instagram is his book and worth it alone. Obviously a guy full of so many stories, and he's put them in a book for you to listen to. Go pick that up. And then watch a little Jim Brunzell on the network if you got it. All right, thank you for coming on. Let's get out of here. Before we do, let's get into some plugs and
upcoming events.
All right, the best way that you can support ColtMerch.com, digitalcolt.com, Twitter and Instagram at Colt Cabana, Facebook /AOW Podcast and /Colt Cabana. Past archives of the show are on howl.fm. Use the code COLT. Get a free month. ColtWrestling@gmail.com is my very public email. Maybe you're a promoter, want to put me on your upcoming show or convention. I got a YouTube channel. You can see my worst promo ever there, amongst many other things. My website, ColtCabana.com. I got a P.O. box on there. That's where you can send some snail mail, and you can just check out my website. Upcoming Friday, July 8th, Baltimore, Maryland, ROHWrestling.com. Saturday, July 9th, Summit, Illinois, ResistancePro.com. Saturday, July 16th, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, ROHWrestling.com. Sunday, July 17th, Toronto, Canada, Destiny World Wrestling.com. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, July 29th through the 31st, London, England, London Film and Comic-Con.com. August 1st and 2nd, Brendan and I are taking our show on the road, Birmingham and Manchester, PerfectStrangersComedy.co.uk, and all of August, the 3rd through the 28th, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Buy tickets at pleasance.co.uk. While I'm over there, I got some dates too. August 6th, Livingston, reckless-intent.com. August 13th, Edinburgh, shop.discoverywrestling.com. August 21st, Newcastle, Facebook /Absolute Wrestling. August 27th, Dundee, Facebook /SWE Online. And August 28th, Glasgow, insanewrestling.com. That is the show for this week. Big thank you to Jumpin' Jim Brunzell Sr., and also his son, who actually hooked this up, Jim Brunzell Jr. You gotta assume his nickname is Jumpin' though also, right? No, you know what? He's his own man. Let's give him a new nickname. Leapin' Jim Brunzell Jr. Thanks to Cable Guy Jeff and Stu Stone. Thanks to Kid Russell and Matt Jenkins on the music. Thanks to Dane Miller with the tech. We do have some sponsors. HighSpots.com. Hundreds of full-length titles available to download. A VOD service that is amazing. A subscription box that is amazing. You can also get gear, a wrestling ring, AMA knee pads, and so much more over there. OneHourTees.com, who help run ProWrestlingTees.com. Not the best Twitter in the world, but the best service, and a mom and pop operation out of Chicago that has gotten pretty big and is doing pretty awesome because you guys love wrestling and t-shirts. Go support your favorite wrestlers over there. Tweakedaudio.com/Colt. The earbuds that I use get over 30% off and free shipping just because you listen to this show. I'm going to rest my ankle. I have been resting. Actually, I've been biking with my ankle, but I feel biking on an ankle is fine because it's just kind of gliding on the pedal, right? It's walking and running. That'll do you in. So I'm trying to do as little of that as possible. Biking's fine though. I'm at this podcast movement, guys. I'm going to be taking in the classes. There's like real podcasters over here doing real things. And Dan and Jared of the podcast movement are killing it, man. They're killing it. Come say hi to me if you're around. Podcastmovement.com. All right, I'm going to go take advantage of this great summer day. Jim Brunzell, the Killer Bee. How cool is that? All right, this has been The Art of Wrestling. For Colt Cabana, I'm Colt Cabana. Thanks.
So this goes best when it's just
back and forth.
Just a conversation.
Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm trying to learn more about you.
Yeah.
As this newfound friendship.
Okay.